Greetings and salutations, young true believers. So today we're talking about Alfred Lessing's famous "What is Wrong with a Forgery" article. So, as Lessing himself notes, right off the board, just right off the bat, uh, what's wrong with a forgery implies that there is something wrong with a forgery. It's assumed that there is, which means we're entering into that territory where aesthetics overlaps with morality. And remember, aesthetics and ethics are both parts of a larger philosophical subdivision known as axiology, the study of value. And given that we assume that there is something wrong with a forgery, it behooves us to find out what is wrong with it. Well, it might help to clarify what's going on here to contrast a forgery with an instance of plagiarism. Plagiarism is wrong because you take someone else's work and you take credit for it as if it was your own. That's not quite what's going on here with a forgery. What's going on with a forgery? Well, we'll examine this case that Lessing frames his article around. So Vermeer is this famous Dutch painter. He painted the famous girl with the pearl earring. If you guys have ever seen that, if you haven't, Google it. Um, Famous painting. And what was so great about Vermeer? Well, prior to Vermeer, no painter had ever used light the way that he did in his paintings. The way he shows light, it's very natural looking. Some might say photographic in a way. Um, Extremely revolutionary at the time, right? And so Van Meegeren is this, kind of Dutch cultural hero. Uh, he's one of the great Dutch masters of painting. Well, fast forward to the early 20th century, there's another Dutch painter, a young guy. His name's Van Meegeren, and Van Meegeren is upset because he feels he's a great artist on par with Vermeer, but his work is not accepted. It's not considered the same caliber as Vermeer's. So, in order to prove to the art world, now, for those of you who've read the interview with Danto, or maybe even taken you know, uh, humanities class of some kind, just a general humanities class, you might have heard that term, not be familiar with it. So, the art world, as defined by Danto, he's the one who originated it, is the ensemble, the collection, right, of art dealers, art critics, art historians, and art collectors, right, that make up the world around which art revolves, right? So, because Van Meegeren wasn't accepted by the art world, he decided he was going to prove to everyone that he was as great as Vermeer. So, what he did is he painted four paintings in the style of Vermeer. And he declared that, I think it was 1936, that they had been discovered in the attic of a house in I don't want to say it was Amsterdam, right? And he showed these to the world. These are four previously unknown Vermeers. Now, this is where things really get weird. The leading scholar, the leading expert on Vermeer's paintings at the time was utterly convinced they were genuine Vermeers, right? So much so he's like, these four paintings make up the greatest of Vermeer's works, right? Um, it's just no question they're Vermeer's. They're brilliant. And so everyone in the art world believed that these were Vermeer's until after World War II. And after World War II, Van Meegeren said, hey, you know what? I fooled everybody. Vermeer didn't paint these. I did. Now you've got to admit that I am every bit as great as Vermeer. But the art world didn't do that, right? No one admitted that Van Meegeren was as great as Vermeer. Why not? Well, Lessing points out there's got to be a problem. There's got to be a problem. Okay, so if there's a problem with forgery, what's the problem? Now, remember, Van Meegeren fooled the world's leading scholar on Vermeer, right? The world's leading scholar on Vermeer at the time believed that these were genuine Vermeers. So whatever's wrong with a forgery, it's not that the artist who creates it lacks talent, because Van Meegeren didn't lack talent. It's not that the painting, or the paintings in this case, aren't beautiful, because they are, right? That's not the issue. Okay, well, what could the issue be? Well, consider. Um, Try to think of a good piece of contemporary cultural art that you'll be familiar with. Well, all right. So Jimi Hendrix, right? Famous American rock and roll guitarist, right? Prior to Jimi Hendrix, nobody played like he did, right? Nobody was using the deep bluesy bends. Nobody was using his kind of uh, overdrive and just his various techniques. He really revolutionized things, right? And after Jimi Hendrix, the world was different, right? Rock and roll guitar playing was different, right? Um, you know, you take a another example. Oh, I don't know. Bass playing, because I'm a musician as well. This is what I go to as my default. Uh, Bass was considered a support instrument. It still largely is considered a support instrument, uh, but it was exclusively considered a support instrument in 1976. And then this remarkable bass player, a guy named Jaco Pastorius from Miami, he released his solo album and just blew everybody's mind because he was transcribing jazz horn solos on the bass guitar. And like, you can't do that. And Jaco was proving everyone wrong. Yes, you can do that, right? But what's the point, right? The point is that there are times when, to use an old phrase, an old turn of phrase, you catch lightning in a bottle, right? Someone comes along and has a vision and changes, literature. They change painting, they change music, they change any of the given arts, right? Uh, Stage, theater, stage theater, sculpture, whatever, right? Somebody comes along, they're the original, and they change it, right? And you can't ever duplicate that moment again, right? It has historical significance, right? So what was wrong with what Lessing was doing? Lessing was trying to recreate an historical moment, right? To use a baking analogy, when you do baking, he's trying to reheat a souffle. It just doesn't work. It rises one time, right? You have historic moments that change things, and they're few and they're far between, and there's no way to duplicate them. And that's exactly what Van Meegeren was trying to do. In other words, what his work threatened to do, what his forgeries threatened to do, was to undermine the historical significance of what Vermeer had accomplished. And there are just some works that are iconic in any given culture. For example, the canonical, the most significant works of literature written in English were by Shakespeare. In Spanish, the most significant work, cultural work, was written by Miguel Cervantes. That's Don Quixote, right? You just can't duplicate that significance again. And to try to pass off your own work as a work of Shakespeare or Cervantes, or in this case Vermeer, is to threaten to undermine that historical significance. That's what's wrong with the forgery on Lessing's view. But I'd like to hear you guys weigh in on this, right? And remember, the problem with the forgery isn't that it lacks, the painter, the forger lacks talent, or that the work isn't beautiful. There's something deeper. This is, again, where aesthetics crosses over with ethics.